July 31st, 1944, 8:45 a.m. A P-38 Lightning photo reconnaissance aircraft lifts off from Borgo Airfield on the island of Corsica. At the controls, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, 44-year-old author of The Little Prince, one of the most beloved books ever written. This should be a routine mission. Fly north, photograph German troop movements in the Rhone Valley, return to base, 3 or 4 hours maximum. Saint-Exupéry never returns. At noon, radar tracks show his aircraft near Marseille. Then nothing. No distress call, no wreckage spotted, no parachute. The most famous writer in France simply vanishes over the Mediterranean Sea. For 54 years, his disappearance remained one of aviation's greatest mysteries. Where did he crash? Was he shot down? Did mechanical failure claim him? Or, as some suspected, did the depressed, aging pilot intentionally fly into the sea? Then, in 1998, a fisherman pulled something extraordinary from his nets, a silver identity bracelet engraved with Saint-Exupéry's name and the names of his wife and publisher. The discovery launched a new search. In 2000, divers found aircraft wreckage. In 2004, France officially confirmed it was Saint-Exupéry's P-38, serial number 4268223, lying 270 feet below the surface off Marseille. But the mystery deepened, because in 2008, an 85-year-old German pilot came forward with a confession. I shot him down, and I've carried the shame for 64 years. Today, we're exploring the last flight of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, poet, aviator, and author whose life and death remain one of World War II's most romantic and tragic mysteries. To understand the mystery, you need to understand the man, because Antoine de Saint-Exupéry was far more than just a writer. Born June 29, 1900, into an aristocratic French family, young Antoine grew up surrounded by privilege but marked by loss. His beloved younger brother François died of rheumatic fever at age 15, a tragedy that would haunt Saint-Exupéry throughout his life and deeply influence his writing. In 1921, while serving in the French cavalry, Saint-Exupéry took his first flying lessons. He soloed on July 9, 1921, and immediately knew he'd found his calling. Aviation wasn't just a career, it was a spiritual experience, a way of seeing the world and humanity from a perspective few could share. After military service, Saint-Exupéry became a commercial pilot for Aéropostale, flying dangerous mail routes across the Sahara Desert and over the Andes Mountains. These were the pioneering days of aviation. No radar, primitive navigation, constant mechanical failures, and routes that crossed some of Earth's most hostile terrain. It was during these years that Saint-Exupéry began writing. His books, Southern Mail, 1929, Night Flight, 1931, Wind, Sand, and Stars, 1939, weren't just adventure stories. They were philosophical meditations on courage, duty, and what it means to be human. His most famous work, The Little Prince, published in 1943, told the story of a young prince from an asteroid who explores the universe before falling to Earth. It's been translated into over 300 languages and has sold over 200 million copies, making it one of the best-selling books in history. But Saint-Exupéry wasn't just writing about adventure. He was living it. In December 1935, attempting to set a speed record from Paris to Saigon, he crashed in the Libyan desert. He and his navigator survived 4 days with almost no water before being rescued by Bedouin tribesmen, nearly dead from dehydration and hallucinations. When World War II began in 1939, Saint-Exupéry immediately volunteered. He flew reconnaissance missions during the fall of France in 1940, earning the Croix de Guerre for his bravery. After France's surrender, he fled to the United States, where he wrote and published while advocating for French liberation. By 1943, he was desperate to return to combat, to fight for his country's freedom. There was just one problem. At 44, he was far too old for combat flying, and his health was failing. By 1943, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry was a physical wreck. Years of crashes had left him with chronic pain. His left shoulder had been badly injured in multiple accidents. He couldn't turn his head properly. He needed help getting into his flight suit and strapping into the cockpit. He was also drinking heavily, suffering from depression, and showing signs of what we would now recognize as PTSD. Military doctors declared him unfit for combat. He was 44 years old, ancient by fighter pilot standards, in a war where most pilots were in their early 20s. But Saint-Exupéry was famous. He was France's most celebrated living writer. His participation in the Free French cause had enormous propaganda value. After persistent lobbying, he was finally granted permission to return to service in North Africa in April 1943. He was assigned to fly F-5B variants of the P-38 Lightning, unarmed photo reconnaissance aircraft. His missions would be dangerous but theoretically less risky than combat flying. He would photograph enemy positions, not engage in dogfights. The P-38 was a sophisticated, powerful aircraft, far more complex than the simple biplanes Saint-Exupéry had flown in his male pilot days. Twin engines, turbochargers, complex fuel systems. For a pilot whose reflexes and physical condition had deteriorated, it was challenging. On his second mission, disaster struck. Engine failure forced him to crash land. He survived, but was grounded for 8 months while recovering from injuries. During this period, his mental health deteriorated further. General Charles de Gaulle publicly accused him of being a Nazi sympathizer, a devastating and false claim that sent Saint-Exupéry spiraling into deeper depression. Friends described him as increasingly fatalistic, talking about death, expressing a longing to join his fallen comrades. He drank heavily. He wrote letters with ominous tones, yet somehow he was cleared to return to flying. Military regulations limited him to 5 reconnaissance missions, but Saint-Exupéry flew 9. The final mission would be July 31st, 1944, 9 days before his plane was officially recovered from duty. July 31st, 1944, France was on the verge of liberation. Operation Dragoon, the Allied invasion of southern France, was just 15 days away. Intelligence was needed. Where were German forces positioned? What defenses existed? How many troops? Saint-Exupéry's mission: fly from Corsica to the Rhone Valley, photograph German positions near Grenoble and Annecy, and return. It was a long flight, perhaps 4 hours, and moderately dangerous, as German fighters still patrolled the area. Friends later reported that Saint-Exupéry had a premonition before this mission. He told colleagues, "If I am shot down, I won't regret anything. The ant heap of the future terrifies me." At 8:45 a.m., he took off in P-38 Lightning, serial number 4268223. His aircraft appeared on Allied radar heading north toward the French coast. The last radar contact placed him near Marseille around noon. Then he vanished. No distress call was received. No explosion was seen. No parachute was spotted. The plane and pilot simply disappeared. By evening, when Saint-Exupéry failed to return, search operations began. Aircraft flew the route. Ships scanned the waters, but they found nothing. 8 days later, on August 8, 1944, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry was officially declared missing in action, presumed dead. The literary world mourned. Newspapers around the globe carried the story. France had lost not just a pilot, but a national treasure. But what had happened? For over 50 years, no one knew. On September 7, 1998, 54 years after Saint-Exupéry vanished, a Marseille fisherman named Jean-Claude pulled in his nets and found something remarkable tangled in them. A silver chain bracelet engraved on it, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, Consuelo, and his wife's name, and Reynal and Hitchcock, his American publisher. The discovery electrified France. After more than half a century, physical evidence of Saint-Exupéry's fate had finally surfaced. The bracelet confirmed what many suspected. He had crashed somewhere in the Mediterranean off Marseille. The discovery also jogged memories. A local diver named Luc Van Rel recalled seeing aircraft wreckage in that area years earlier. He had assumed it was German. Van Rel began searching. At 270 feet below the surface in the Bay of Marseille, he found a debris field approximately 1 kilometer long and 400 meters wide. The size and scatter pattern suggested an aircraft had hit the water at extremely high speed, probably close to vertical impact. The wreckage was tangled with that of a German Messerschmitt, creating a vast puzzle. Multiple aircraft had gone down in this heavily contested area during the war. But among the wreckage, searchers found crucial evidence, a piece with a serial number. After a 2-year delay imposed by the French government, partly to protect the site from looters and partly to prepare for the emotional impact, recovery operations began in October 2003. On April 7, 2004, French officials announced the serial number 2734L definitively matched P-38 Lightning, serial number 4268223, Saint-Exupéry's aircraft. France finally knew where their beloved author had crashed, but the mystery was far from solved. because the wreckage raised more questions than it answered. When investigators examined the recovered wreckage, they found several puzzling details. First, no bullet holes. Despite careful examination, no evidence of combat damage was found. No bullet holes, no cannon shell impacts. No signs of fire or explosion from enemy action. Second, vertical impact. The debris field and damage patterns indicated the aircraft struck the water at high speed in an almost vertical dive, traveling approximately 500 mph nearly straight down. Third, widely scattered debris. The wreckage was spread over a huge area, suggesting the aircraft had broken apart on impact with tremendous force. What could cause a P-38 to dive vertically into the sea at full speed? Several theories emerged. Mechanical failure. The P-38's complex turbocharger system was prone to problems. An engine failure at altitude could cause loss of control, especially for a pilot whose physical condition and reflexes were compromised. Oxygen system failure. At high altitude, loss of oxygen causes rapid unconsciousness. Saint-Exupéry might have passed out, and the aircraft simply dove into the sea with no one conscious at the controls. Spatial disorientation. Flying over open water with no visual references, pilots can lose sense of up and down. Saint-Exupéry might have become disoriented and entered an unrecoverable dive. Intentional crash, suicide. Given Saint-Exupéry's depression, his fatalistic statements before the mission, and the vertical dive, some investigators considered the possibility he intentionally flew into the sea. But there was also another possibility, one that would emerge 6 decades after the crash. In 2008, a German man named Horst Rippert, 88 years old, came forward with a stunning confession. Rippert had been a Luftwaffe pilot during World War II, flying Fokker, Wolf, F-190, and Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighters. He claimed 28 aerial victories during the war and had served in France during 1944. According to Rippert, on July 31, 1944, around noon, he was flying a Messerschmitt Bf-109 on patrol near the French Mediterranean coast when he spotted a lone P-38 Lightning flying below him. He maneuvered into position behind the American aircraft and fired. The P-38 went down. For 64 years, Rippert kept this secret. But when Saint-Exupéry's wreckage was discovered and confirmed in 2004, Rippert's conscience tormented him. You see, Horst Rippert had learned to fly before the war, inspired by his hero Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. He had read Saint-Exupéry's books, he idolized the French aviator author, and on July 31st, 1944, he had killed his hero. If I had known it was Saint-Exupéry, I would never have fired, Rippert told journalists. He was my literary idol. I read all his books. The confession created a sensation. Was Rippert telling the truth? Had he really shot down France's most beloved author? Investigators checked Luftwaffe records. Rippert had indeed been stationed in the area on July 31st, 1944. His unit's logs showed activity that day. His account was plausible. But there was a problem. The wreckage showed no bullet holes. So what really happened to Antoine de Saint-Exupéry? To this day, we don't know with certainty. The case for Rippert's account, he was in the area at the right time. His unit's records confirm activity. He had no reason to lie. The confession brought him only shame. A P-38 was shot down in that area on that day, confirmed by German records. The case against Rippert's account. The wreckage shows no bullet damage. However, only a small portion of the aircraft was recovered. Bullet holes in sections still on the seabed wouldn't be visible. High-speed water impact could have obliterated combat damage. The case for mechanical failure. The P-38's complex systems were prone to problems. Saint-Exupéry was an aging pilot in poor physical condition. Oxygen system failure could cause unconsciousness. The vertical dive is consistent with an uncontrolled aircraft. The case for intentional crash. Saint-Exupéry was deeply depressed. He made fatalistic statements before the flight. The vertical dive at full speed suggests intentional action. Friends later said they weren't surprised he didn't return. French officials concluded the cause remains unknown. The wreckage was too incomplete, too many possibilities, too little definitive evidence. Perhaps it doesn't matter. Perhaps the mystery itself is fitting for a man who wrote so beautifully about the unknown, about exploring beyond the visible, about accepting life's unanswerable questions. Today, the recovered fragments of Saint-Exupéry's P-38 are displayed at the Musée de l'Air et de l'Espace, Air and Space Museum, at Le Bourget Airport in Paris, where his life is commemorated in a special exhibit. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry wrote, "What saves a man is to take a step, then another step. It is always the same step, but you have to take it." On July 31st, 1944, he took his final step into a P-38 Lightning into the sky and into legend. Whether he was shot down by a young German pilot who idolized him, whether mechanical failure claimed him, whether he intentionally flew into the sea, or whether something else entirely happened, we will never know with absolute certainty. What we do know is that Antoine de Saint-Exupéry lived as he wrote, with courage, with poetry, with a deep love for flight and humanity. He survived desert crashes, wartime combat, and personal demons. He gave the world The Little Prince, a story that reminds us what is essential is invisible to the eye. And perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the mystery of his disappearance, like the little prince returning to his asteroid, is the perfect ending for a man whose entire life was about seeking meaning beyond the visible, beyond the explainable. France declared him mort pour la France, died for France in 1948. His image appeared on the 50-franc note until the euro replaced it in 2002. Lyons International Airport bears his name, and The Little Prince continues to sell millions of copies annually, translated into over 300 languages. Saint-Exupéry once wrote, "If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea." On July 31st, 1944, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry returned to that endless immensity, and there he remains, pilot, poet, philosopher, forever part of the sky he loved. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please subscribe for more World War II mysteries, and let me know in the comments. Do you think Rippert really shot him down, or was it something else? Until next time, remember, it is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye.